Mind and Brain Hacking for Beginners. Written by Giovanni Rigters. Narrated by J.A. Leidig. Introduction. Mind and brain hacking for beginners will change your view of your entire life. It will give you a better view of your own flaws and insecurities, as well as instructions on how to overcome them and improve in any aspect of your life. As you will see, mind and/or brain hacking does not necessarily mean that you change everything that defines you as a human being. You will begin to see the flaws that you have, and in this way, you will know how to change them. You may have even identified the negative behavior you have, but you have probably tried and failed to change them for the better. Using this book and the examples that are contained within it, you will be able to permanently erase the negative sides of your personality, routines, habits, etc. The process of changing your habits might be difficult because it takes a long time to eliminate or to introduce and accept a habit. There are several steps that you need to go through for you to successfully change your habits. This works the same for any aspect of your life that you want to change. It may take longer to get there, but ultimately, you will arrive at your destination. And that is what we strive for, right? We all want to be successful in whatever we do. We, as humans, have that innate desire always to be first, to be on the top of the food chain. As a species, we might be considered as such, at least in some respects, but on an individual level, we tend to compete with others and always strive for first place. There's nothing negative about that. That is the reason why technologies have improved so much in the last couple of decades. We move forward as a species, and some individuals do too. But wouldn't it be amazing if all of us took a step forward and improved the very things that define us as individuals? If each human would improve the bad aspects of their behavior, for example, there would be no bad influences on others. Thus, some negative behaviors might get erased altogether, just like vaccines are designed to eliminate particular diseases. Now, I know this sounds way too optimistic and hardly possible to realize, but if everyone would change at least one negative habit that they have, the world would definitely be a better place. I know that some people are troubled by some big problems in politics, climate change, endangered species, etc. I am too. I keep thinking about how I am too small to help reduce any of those threats. To solve such issues, we need unity and all the individuals in one place, one perspective, having one goal. It is very difficult, but maybe one day. Until then, we should improve ourselves and motivate others to do the same because small changes may lead to larger ones. Chapter 1. What exactly is mind hacking? Mind and brain hacking might sound quite intriguing to a person who does not know what it is. One might think that the secret agencies all over the world are able to hack into your mind or brain to see what you know, what you're thinking, planning, wanting, etc. I know that was the first thought I had when someone mentioned this many years ago. Then I went on thinking for the next couple of weeks whether there really was something that was invented that could enable people to hack into our brains and minds, literally. I also did some research during this period, and I gathered that the phrase does not refer to literal hacking done by someone else, but to a theory which helps people change for the better. Mind hacking is a way to change the bad habits we have. Let's face it, we all make so many mistakes on a daily basis, and we all have bad habits. For some people, those bad habits are quite crucial for their well-being. If they continue living the way they do, they might worsen their current state. Such bad habits are closely connected to one's lifestyle, and they can easily be diagnosed as a type of addiction to certain things or activities, such as drugs, alcohol, shopping, etc. However, other people just have some minor habits that affect some aspects of their performance during the day. These might be some small issues in their behavior, speech, or thinking. Anyway, one should strive to change those bad habits, regardless of whether they are minuscule or gigantic, and change into a better person. Now, I know that many people like myself do not see the negatives in themselves at first. We just do not notice, or we do not want to notice some of the bad habits we have. It is in our human nature to be narcissistic, And we as humans tend to idolize ourselves so much that we do not see anything bad or negative unless we know what we are looking for. We do notice such behaviors or characteristics in others, but when it comes to ourselves, we deny it almost always. It is probably the ego that does not allow us to admit that we do indeed have a negative side. On the other hand, some people know all that and admit it, but are not willing to change anything. I think many people who smoke cigarettes, drink alcohol, or do drugs are like this. They are aware that they are doing themselves harm by consuming those things, but they are enjoying the experience too much to give up on it. Then they keep convincing themselves that there is no harm in doing that and that they are in control. They think that they can control the intake and they can stop whenever they feel like they should. However, the truth is a bit different. They sometimes may control the intake, but most often they end consuming much more than they should, and the results are becoming visible on their overall health. This is when it gets alarming both to them and the people around them. Then they will try to make it better, and some of them will succeed. However, the majority will not know what to do, and even when they are going to try to change, they will once again fall into the negative loop and go back to where they were. I am sure that everyone knows a person who is a passionate smoker. Once in their lifetime, or possibly many times, but at least once, they have decided to quit smoking. They had their reasons, probably health or financial or something other than that. They did pretty well for several days, maybe even weeks or months, and then it happened. Something triggered them to take one more, the last one. At least they thought so. The reason behind this move could be stress or nostalgia or whatever their reason might be, but they lit another cigarette. Then there was no turning back. After that one came the second one and the third, and they began smoking even more than they did before. As you can see, they fell into their own trap and never succeeded in stopping smoking. Of course, this is not the only possible outcome of such situations, but it is one of the more frequent ones. Another example of the behaviors that are in desperate need of change is violence. This type of negative behavior is devastating both to the person who is violent and the people around them. Let's just quickly analyze domestic violence, for example. The man of the house is typically the one who is inflicting violence on others in the house. This is not a rule, but the data shows that males are more likely to be violent to show dominance and control the family. The type of violence can be both verbal and physical. The verbal abuse is most often seen as a milder type of abuse, but given that insults and bad language can have a negative effect on one's personality, especially if the victim is a child, it can have quite devastating results on the development of the victim's personality. On the other hand, physical abuse can leave visible traces that the victim may have to look at their entire life. The physical violence the victims are going through can also have serious consequences on their personalities and also their health. Every person is able to realize that the possible consequences of violence can lead to serious health issues as well as death. That is why people do not usually opt for violent responses in any given situation. There are other ways to solve problems rather than just by punching and kicking. However, there are a certain number of people who do not realize or they do not even think about the consequences, and they do solve the problems with their fists. These people are the ones who are violent towards the people around them. Regardless of what their initial reasons for such behavior are, at one point they realize that they can no longer continue hurting their family. They repent, ask forgiveness, promise that they will change, and actually hold in the anger for some time. However, after a while, they feel like they cannot change anything or that they are not authoritative enough, and they return to their former behavior and continue hurting others. This goes on and on. They keep changing and returning to violent behavior until there is no one left to hurt because their family has left them, or an event with tragic consequences happens, and they are either punished by the authorities or determined to change. Chapter 2. Identifying bad behavior and negative habits. There are so many examples of behaviors and negative habits that each of us has. Some of them are quite difficult to identify. Of course, for problematic behaviors such as those in the above examples, we may be aware of, and maybe we have searched for the solution to our problems for some time now. But, on the other side, there are those habits that we are not aware of, and for those, we need the help of the people around us. The individual needs to be objective. If one approaches the problem from a subjective perspective, they tend to find excuses, and they will not be hard on themselves for that same reason. They will always think that this is not a big deal, and that they can change it any time they want to. They also feel that the problem is not theirs, but blame others, etc. Also, they are prone to defending themselves by attacking others. Now, I'm sure that everyone was in this situation, maybe on one side of it at some time or the other, or maybe both on different occasions. Anyway, the situation is the following. There are two friends or family members. One of them has a bad habit that annoys everyone around them. They tend to be a know-it-all and keep talking about everything even though no one asked for their opinion. The other person is so frustrated with their behavior that they have decided that they are going to confront them and ask them to stop. So they do so, and the first person is surprised at first, but then they think of an issue the other person has and tells them. They start arguing about how the other person is almost always insecure and that they are afraid to speak for themselves, and the other person starts feeling insecure once again and retreats, and this becomes a huge problem. Everyone should be able and willing to admit the flaws that they have. We, as humans, need to understand that we are flawed. We have imperfections and we make mistakes. It is perfectly normal to make mistakes, and it is perfectly normal to be able to accept those mistakes and admit them. Only if we admit the mistakes that we have made can we make a move forward and fix them. Imagine a mechanical engineer that is creating and constructing a machine. While they are doing their job, they overlook something, and in the end, it seems that the mistake that they made might cost them more time and energy to repair it, or they can leave it as it is for the cost of damages to the future owners or even possible death. Wouldn't it be normal to admit the mistake and fix it no matter how long it took, and no matter how exhausting it might be? Any normal person would do so because the people who trusted him with their property or lives are at risk. Similarly, one should always strive to be better, regardless of whether they have small, simple issues or gigantic ones. There is no way one can ruin their lives unless they willingly do so. Now, I know there are so many things that happen to all of us that we have no control over in any way. But there are also numerous aspects of our lives that we have control over, and we do nothing about it because we are too lazy or think that it will not change a thing. Let me introduce another example of this, like daily routines. Most people, regardless of what kind of life they live, enjoy having routines in their lives. Of course, there are people that do not have them and live the way they feel like in the moment. Now, for those people, they think that it is the same thing if they wake up early, do morning routines like exercise, breakfast, coffee, etc., and then move on with the day, work 9 to 5, etc. And if they stay awake late at night, have a hard time waking up in the morning, rushing to get ready for work, and when they finish for the day, they are exhausted. And once they freshen up, they are able to stay up late into the night, and the cycle continues. Actually, regardless of what our lifestyle looks like, we have routines in our lives, even if we are not aware of them. But the difference between the two is in the benefits they bring by implementing changes. If you carefully organize your day so that you have enough time for yourself to relax and enjoy the day with your friends and family, or even on your own, you are more likely to be relaxed and fulfilled and probably more energized. On the other hand, if you do not organize your daily schedule, you will end up running around, trying to finish everything, and may often end up not succeeding due to some organizing issues. The outcome is depressing. You will have less energy and motivation, and you will most probably have increased levels of anxiety and stress because of the failures that happen to you daily. Once you get into such a state, you will feel like you cannot do anything to change it, and that even if you do try to change, you will most likely fail. These feelings of possible future failures in whatever you try to do are products of your past failures. They influence your levels of confidence so much that you doubt that you can achieve your goals. This is the reason one does not even try to make a change. They are filled with doubts and have, therefore, lost confidence in themselves. However, I think no one should stop dreaming and working toward their dreams. The failures are merely experiences that help us build our personalities and grow even better each day. One should have in mind that each experience, whether it is a positive or a negative one, should just be lessons for future goal achievements. There are a lot of lessons to learn both from successes and failures. Frankly, there is no human being that hasn't faced failures in their life. If you fall, just stand up, dust yourself off, and try again. That is the best piece of advice I have ever been given. It pushes you forward to do amazing things. Just remember that no one learned how to walk without falling. But still, everyone got up again and tried. All you need is motivation and a strong determination to succeed in whatever you decide to do. So, when it comes to mind and brain hacking, it is that one quick and easy process that every person needs to know. It is essential for our well-being. If we are able to identify the problem within our brains, within our behaviors and thoughts, we will be able to find a way to reprogram it and change it so that it functions perfectly. This process does not include just identifying the problem, but also changing oneself so that you function better and live a happier life. This does not apply only to the personality aspect of a person, but on any other you may possibly imagine. Using these techniques, you can improve your memory, intellectual skills, physical skills, emotional reactions, personality traits, etc. Basically, whatever you feel you need to change, you can. You just need to implement these strategies, and you will definitely succeed. The entire process will be presented in the next chapter. You will be able to follow it and enjoy the transformation into a better human. Chapter 3. How to Reprogram Your Mind. I am sure that most of you thought, whoa, is it even possible to reprogram your brain? We will get to that, I promise. You understand by now that it is possible to hack into one's mind and reprogram it. But the question is how to do it. You will find the answer in the following pages, of course. The first step in reprogramming your mind is recognizing its existence and understanding how it works. It is very important to acknowledge that our minds coexist within us. We receive information through the 5 senses, or more concisely, their receptors. That is why we are able to hear, smell, taste, see, and touch. All that information is received by the sensory receptors. Then, they travel through the complex network of neurons that are connected to the brain. In our brain, an amazing and breathtaking process occurs. The information that is received is transformed into signals, which are taken to different centers in the brain which process them. Then, the brain directs the nerves to a response or an activity. This is just a simplified version of the process. The truth is that even the simplest activities, such as drinking water, have so many steps that we are not even aware of. If we were to look at such an example, we would first come upon the information in our brains that tells us that we are thirsty. Then we need visual information where the water and the glass we are supposed to drink from are. Then we are directed to go there, take a glass, pour water into it, and then bring the glass to our lips. Tilt it so that we can drink, and then start drinking. We can add all the different information that goes in here, such as the confirmation of the spatial information, directions, tactile, and visual confirmation that we are holding a glass and not a plate, the coordination of hands and mouth, etc. All the information goes back and forth from the receptors to the brain and back, so that the best outcome is acquired. Of course, we could go into much more detail, but to illustrate an example of how our minds work, this is enough, I believe. Now, if we take a look at one such example, we can see that we have very complex software developed within our heads. The software is our mind, of course, and it is installed within our brains. which eases the execution of different operations. Is it possible to imagine our minds? Let's stop for a minute and try to imagine it. I talked to so many people, and they all had different descriptions of their minds. Some of them described it as colorful, fragrant, and tidy. Others would say that their mind is also colorful, but very messy. Some other individuals would comment on the state of their mind as neat, tidy, and organized, and so on. Almost every person imagines it differently, and that is fine. After all, we are different, right? We think differently. We behave differently. We have different personalities. Doesn't that imply we have different minds too? I would say so. It all starts there, in our minds. That is the place where the ideas come from, both good ones and bad ones. That is where we make choices, the software that we control and program the way we want. However, more often than not, we are influenced by others. While we are growing up, people around us, primarily our parents and our siblings, are our role models. We look at them with admiration and we want to be like them when we grow up. That influences many choices we make while we are growing up. That is true, especially if the parents are overprotective and controlling. Children want to please their parents and therefore choose the things they know or think their parents will approve of. That changes in the period of adolescence, but then we see our peers or some famous people as our role models. We no longer look up to our parents, but we want to be accepted by society and the social circles we are in, so we blend in by doing what the group is content with. From one stage of life to the other, we will always strive to please others. Of course, this is not a rule, as there are people who live their lives the way they want and enjoy every aspect of it. Now, to get in control over your mind and to reprogram it, you will first need to be aware of it and then analyze it. If you are somewhat analytical, you will analyze, for example, a TV show, a movie, a game, and see all the different parts of that unit that make it a whole. Then, after quite a short period, if you like it, you will stop analyzing, and you will get more involved in the plot itself than how it is conveyed. Similarly, you will be able to identify your mind and what it looks like. But once you are in the process of deciding or any other as a matter of fact, you will lose track of your mind and stay occupied with the newfound situation. All the things that happen to you and around you act as a distraction, and you cannot focus on how your mind works because of that. So basically, the first step is to keep track of your mind. You will do this by keeping track of everything. I know, it sounds a bit weird, but just like you are able to imagine your own brain, you can keep track of it. Try to ask yourself what my mind is doing right now as often as you can throughout the day. You can make a spreadsheet and write down everything you notice. As time goes by, you will notice more and more of the processes and thoughts that are conveyed by your mind. You will train yourself to notice and understand the processes that are happening in your mind. This way, you will get a better view of your mind, which will help greatly to analyze it, and in the end, hack and reprogram it, which is our goal. We might keep track of our mind while we are doing a job that is merely a routine, one that does not require much involvement of thoughts and mental processes. One such activity is anything from home chores or shopping or going for a walk by yourself. In such activities, you just do what you intended to do. For example, washing the dishes, and you do not think about how you're going to do it, you just do it. Then, you will catch your mind in action. You will notice if you have some issues in your life, it will keep complaining, and you may be asking yourself, why did you do that? What do you need to do? What will you do next? Etc. On the other hand, if you do not have some major issues, it might recollect memories from good times or some funny situations that happened some time ago. You will feel even more relaxed and enjoy the good times even better. As you can see, your mind will be either your friend or your enemy. It depends on how you train it or program it to be. Naturally, all of us think it should be our best friend. However, we need to make it a friend. I read a very interesting life story of a scientist who was diagnosed with schizophrenia. He was very successful up until that, and his research was very promising. However, once others started noticing his disease, it was already set that there would be no contributions from him. And how could he contribute to science when he kept imagining impossible things happening to him? He kept seeing things differently. He thought that aliens were contacting him, that secret agencies were after him, etc. But this brilliant man did make contributions to science, both in his field of study and in many others, because he fought the disease like no one else before him. He kept identifying those imaginations as such and isolating them from reality. Once he did that, he could still function normally without his mind interrupting him with some illusions. Now, what we want to do is find out how our minds work and enter it so that we can rewrite it. However, the access is highly restricted, and you will most likely go into a phase where you do have access, but before you even know it, you will be out and see just the content of the mind and not the process itself. You will train yourself to recognize these processes and to follow their course. While you are doing so, you will also learn to predict what is going to happen next, when the mind is likely to show up, etc. A recent study has shown that exercising like this, finding ways to control your mind, is very beneficial. It can help you focus your mind on what matters, rather than letting it wander off to things that might be completely irrelevant. The study focused on increasing control over cognitive processes. The subjects were asked to focus on something and to keep track of their mind, and as soon as it wandered off, they were to focus on the target again. This has proven to improve their attention span for much longer periods of time. They were trained in this matter over a certain period, and when they were tested again, they proved to be able to keep focused on something despite numerous distractions that were employed. This way, the subjects were able to reprogram their minds to stay more focused on something, and this can be very beneficial when studying, working, and life in general. Another skill that everyone will find useful in life is related to thinking. Of course, thinking is also essential for any improvement we want to make in our lives, and it is crucial in our everyday life. Whenever we are faced with a choice, we need to think about the choices and make a decision. Thinking helps us to complete any projects we may come up with, and it helps us improve our lifestyles. However, what is even more important and even better for our improvements is meta-thinking. Meta-thinking is basically thinking after thinking in its literal translation. It is actually thinking in advance, just like in some strategy games. What will happen if I move this player here? Will the opponent notice? Will they attack me because of that move? What will I lose/achieve, etc.? Thinking in advance is necessary for so many reasons. Yes, you still may think of it in terms of games, but in real life, thinking in advance is essential for making progress. Let's say you want to start your own business. The logical course of events is that you would first think of the type of business you want to run. Then, once you have established that, you need to test your market because there's no point in investing your time and money into something that no one is willing to buy. This does not necessarily have to be related to merchandise and selling physical goods. This may be related to services you may want to offer, like translating, bookkeeping, marketing, etc. You have to know your competition. If the field you are planning to build a business in is too busy, with many people doing it, it will be much more difficult to find customers. On the other hand, if you are planning to work on something unique, yet appealing to everyone, you will probably have more customers and a better start for your upcoming business. You will also need to research the sources, possible buyers, marketing strategies, etc. All this is thinking and planning in advance, which helps you succeed. Similarly, the president of a country does not throw a nuclear bomb on another country because they don't like the other country's president. If they do so for some trivial reasons as such, they will most probably enter a war and lead their nation into bloodshed. However, if they think in advance, they will know that it could cause instabilities within their own country, and for those reasons, they are likely to opt for some more peaceful options to solve problems with that particular country. For those and many other reasons, it is important that we develop metacognitive skills so that we can predict what might happen as a result of some of our own behaviors. Most people have this skill as an innate feature, and they tend to make choices based on it. However, very few people are actually aware of the existence of such skills. Now that you know about them, it would be a shame not to improve them so that in the future you are able to make better choices, both for yourselves and for others too. Chapter 4. Moving from distraction to focus. It is important to be able to notice when your mind starts wandering off what really matters and guide it back to the original path of thinking and meta-thinking. Your mind will often play games with you. Thus, you will enjoy doing what you normally do, but your mind will stop you there and start imposing some topics that distract you from what mattered earlier. You will notice that you are not thinking about what you normally would, but you are now thinking about something completely irrelevant. There, you need to be able to get it back on track and guide it so that you can stay focused on the main issue. Another thing that distracts us from our main objectives is the lack of attention. This does not mean that you cannot focus on anything, but that you are easily distracted by some other things. For example, social media and technology are a great part of our lives. We cannot imagine living without it. I can and would love to distance myself from everything. But, there's always a but, one cannot isolate themselves from all that because our jobs depend on it, and related to that, our lives. We communicate more often via technology than in person. We are so immersed in such lifestyles that we simply cannot live without checking on our phones for messages and news. We keep checking and looking at our screens, and if we were to analyze the amount of time spent scrolling through the news, we would be surprised. Now, back to the distractions. One type of distraction that is closely connected to your mind trick is the one we just spoke about. Our minds will constantly remind us to leave anything that we are doing so that we can check the news or messages. We will constantly keep looking at our screens and interrupt the activity that was important to us. But our mind is set to distract us using technologies, and it usually wins. What you and I could do when it comes to this type of distraction is to turn off the alerts while we are doing something important and train our mind to ignore such alerts. We can also keep track of the frequency of such distractions and see if it changes over time. It should change if you keep training your mind not to become attracted to it. However, if you are just keeping track and not doing anything to prevent yourself from losing the attention, then you will not get any results whatsoever. Once we have identified what has caused us to lose attention and to think about something that should not be in our focus, we need to try our best to remove such negative influences from our environment. As we have mentioned earlier, there are those thinking loops that we are constantly in. If we are afraid of failure, we will be afraid of even trying something and then again fail even to try, etc. The same goes for smoking and other examples that we have listed earlier. These negative loops need to be removed from our mind. The reason for the removal is simple. You need to have positive loops that will optimistically drive you towards success rather than failure. I am sure you have heard of the law of attraction. It could be a myth, but so many people believe in it. Basically, it implies that if you are positive and optimistic, you will attract positive people and positive things will happen to you in general. Whereas if you are negative and pessimistic, you will likely attract negative people and situations. It could be true for some reason. However, I'm sure that if you try, for example, to quit smoking and in the process you constantly think that you will fail and that you will eventually return to smoking at some point, you are most likely to fail. On the other hand, if you are beginning from a positive point of view and are constantly finding reasons why you should persist in implementing your plan, you will most likely succeed. It is a matter of your state of mind. If a person is determined to do something, they will succeed. And if they are not secure enough and always have doubts, they might easily get confused and lose confidence, which will, in turn, result in failure. When we are dealing with those negative loops, we may use different methods to get rid of them. The reason for eliminating negative loops from your thoughts is important because once you do that, you can start changing them for positive loops that will help you move forward. These negative loops are closely connected to some psychological issues you may have. So if you feel that something is bothering you or preventing you from doing something, you might be close to finding that loop. Now, once you have a suspect, you can start the interrogation. You can ask yourself why you feel the way you do. The more you ask the same question related to one issue that bothers you, the more you become one step closer to finding out the cause of that negative loop. When you get to the core of the problem, you can say, okay, I know that I'm afraid of heights because I fell from a tree and hurt my knee when I was a child. I was not even aware of the danger I was in, but now I know how to take care of myself. This is just an example. Here, we even have an example of turning a negative loop into a positive one. So, using such techniques will help us understand the different causes of some of the issues we have. Once we understand what causes the problem we have, we can start eliminating them. Another method of eliminating negative loops of thoughts is to ask yourself what is the worst possible scenario that could happen to you. You may even exaggerate to the extent of even mocking your own fear, which will help you see how ridiculous it might be. Besides that approach, you can always take a different perspective. When you are in a stressful situation, you can ask yourself what advice you would give to a friend in such a situation. What would you think about if someone else was going through the same issues? Disregard the fact that it is you who are in the situation and think clearly about what solution could be offered to someone experiencing such problems. Just like with all the previous steps of the training, you can keep track of these too. The next step in hacking your mind is to give your mind space and time for imagination. You need to motivate your mind to imagine different things. You would be surprised at how many discoveries were made from just thinking about a phenomenon and thinking about possible hypotheses and solutions for different problems. Now, you are maybe not destined to make a great discovery, but there are those small things that might help you improve your life, like changing negative thinking loops for positive ones. In this step, you will rethink your negative loops and think about new positive loops or thinking processes that will help you regain your life in a way that you have always imagined. By replacing the negative loops with positive ones, you will give yourself a chance to thrive and move forward, regardless of what your initial problem were. One way of replacing your negative loops with positive ones is to imagine the best possible scenario. If you are constantly in fear for your or someone else's future, you will need to eliminate that negative loop by first imagining the worst-case scenario to see the possibilities of what may happen. Then you will start the training of your thoughts in a positive way. You will ask yourself constantly what the best thing that could happen as a result of something you are doing could be at that moment. You can also ask yourself what the best case scenario is for the next 5, 10, 15 years. Where do you think you might end up over that certain period of time? If you are constantly thinking about having a bright future, you will be happier and more motivated to achieve your 5, 10, or 15-year plans. On the other hand, if you are pessimistic and you keep having doubts about your future plans, you will most likely fail because you do not believe in yourself in the first place. Let's say that we have 2 students as an example. Both of them are freshmen in medical studies and are dreaming of becoming doctors one day. One of them is very hardworking and diligent. They do all their assignments on time, and they are truly interested in the studies. They have a clear 10-year plan by which they will finish the studies on time and work their way up to becoming a surgeon. The other one also dreams of becoming a doctor, but they are always late for the lectures. They do not finish their assignments on time, and they are constantly complaining. Other students see that they have the desire to learn, but they are too lazy to study. Because of that laziness, they end up having many assignments to do and study for their exams. This leads them to more pessimistic thoughts of their future because they think it is impossible to manage to complete all the assignments and to study for exams at the same time. Therefore, they are convinced that they are going to fail, and after some period of trying to catch up with all the tasks, they quit the studies and change plans. It does not necessarily go this way, but most of the time when we give up, the current just takes us away from the shore. The shore that we intended to go to is way too far away, and the one that the current has washed us up on is the one we have never intended to go to. The same goes for plans and the future. If we are not focused and consistent, we will end up doing things that we had never imagined when we were planning it in the first place. You can think about yourself from a different perspective and maybe even see some major mistakes that you might constantly be making, but you are unaware of them. Just like you can see what others do that they maybe shouldn't. You might be able to see some of your own mistakes if you take enough distance. This may be extremely difficult because you are looking at yourself and what you do. You will tend to make excuses for each of your mistakes because you know why you did that. It is very difficult to stay objective in such situations. But you can be your best critic, and therefore you are the one who can indeed change something. Once you identify the problems, you can work on eliminating them or changing them into something good. A spin-off of this strategy is to think about what others would say about you at your funeral. The reality is all of us will die one day. Then and there, people are talking about you. Who you were, what you did, good or bad, giving speeches of what you meant to them, etc. Think about what you want to become. What is it that you want to be remembered for? When you know that one thing or more you want to become or achieve, work on focusing your attention toward fulfilling that goal. The reality of death is a strong motivator for many people. When you are aware that one day you are going to die, you feel motivated to finish something you have started, or even to start some new chapters in your life, because you do not know if you're going to have time for that in 10 or 20 years. Death is unpredictable, and therefore we may feel motivated to do more because we all want to be remembered as good people who worked hard to achieve their dreams. No one with a completely sane mind wants to be remembered as a criminal, bad person, or bad influence in general. On the other hand, some people may feel discouraged to do anything, knowing that they will die eventually. They will be too scared of dying so that they will lose the motivation to do anything. However, this is quite rare, and usually these people suffer from anxiety or depression. In such cases, they need to get help from a mental health professional, and they need to find out what is the cause of their fears and their negative thinking loops. Once they reveal all that, they can start thinking in a more positive way. They can imagine living for a longer period than they have previously imagined. And they can force their minds to think about what they can do before it happens and not just wait and think about it. This is one way of hacking into your mind and reprogramming it. You find out the cause, analyze your negative loops of thoughts, change them into positive, and reinforce the change. This is just a simple plan to follow whenever you can. It is applicable in many situations. Let's take an example. Sue is a person who is not comfortable with complaining about an order they got. She has trouble saying no to people. She went out with her friends and ordered hot chicken wings. After a while, the waiter brought her order, but the meal was cold, and the crust on the wings was soggy. Even though she hated the dish, she refused to call the waiter and return the plate because she was not used to complaining, even if she had a valid reason for complaining. Instead, she ate a small amount and said she wasn't hungry. Her friend tried the dish and immediately said that she should have returned it right away. Now, she realized from this and many other situations in her life that she needed to change. If she continued behaving this way, she would become miserable. Her friends also encouraged her to stand up for herself and to fight for what she deserved. Sue then asked herself why she behaved that way. She came to realize that her family members were always telling her that she did not deserve anything good, so that she had engraved it in her mind that she should have whatever she gets, and that is good enough for her. Apart from that, she had developed a fear of humiliation and rejection, which then resulted in her fear of complaining about anything. Now that she had realized that, she started to think about the good things in her life, her friends, hobbies, etc. She realized that many people liked her and that she was worth much more than she had thought. She then decided to start standing up for herself, and to do so, she would practice it as often as possible with the help of her friends. They had thought of a series of exercises that would help her overcome her fear. She also wrote a note to herself to remind her that she is valuable and that she deserves the best of life, just like every other human being. Whenever she starts feeling down, she takes the note and reads it. After a while, she went to that same restaurant that did not get her the right order. And there, she returned the wrong dish and asked for the other one, the one she wanted in the first place. The waiter takes the plate and brings a freshly made dish that she'd asked for. The feeling that Sue got was rewarding and accomplishing. This left such an impression on her that she now has the strength to stand up for herself each time she is mistreated. This way, she has reprogrammed her mind into thinking that she is worth having what she wants, and not what others get her. This example is just one of many that anyone can apply, regardless of what your problem is. You need to analyze it, know what causes it, think of a positive solution, and implement it. If you need help from written materials, do write a note to yourself. This will be like a basis for the reprogramming of your mind. Whenever in doubt, return to the note. The best way to eliminate bad habits is to replace them with other, better habits. If you are like me, for example, getting up late every morning, but I would love to be able to get up early while the kids are still asleep and do most of my work in the morning. I always tend to fall asleep long after midnight, so there is no possible way for me to get up early and have a good night of sleep. Therefore, I have decided to go to bed earlier and set my alarm clock earlier as well. First, I set my alarm clock 30 minutes before I usually wake up. I also went to bed earlier. I had this type of bed routine for several days, and then I moved back for another 30 minutes. I did this several times, and now at least I go to bed before midnight. I also wake up a lot earlier than I used to. Still, I have yet to meet the goal I have set for myself, but I am on a good track. In this case, my mind would always remind me of how a short period of time I would have for sleeping if I were to go to sleep as usual, but wake up early. My mind would remind me that I will not get enough sleep and that I will probably have a headache and be miserable the entire day because of that. This way, I have managed to reprogram my mind to change the routines I've had for years. I gradually changed the habit I had. I have introduced a new, better routine, and it works perfectly. As I've said previously, you need to convince your mind to change and impose new rules. Keep track of your mind and keep it in control. You will be able to hack your mind and reprogram it by keeping track of it and changing the perspective. Basically, you have several steps you need to make to reprogram your mind successfully, and those are keeping track of your mind, identifying problems and negative loops of thought, finding causes for them, changing them into positive loops and behaviors, implementing the changes until they become part of your everyday life. Chapter 5. Brain Hacking Exposed. Yes, I know what it sounds like. I promise it has nothing to do with aliens, though it sounds very reminiscent of such species. Aliens do not exist. Do they, though? Anyway, there's a way to hack and reprogram your brain too. Even though brain hacking is not that connected to mind hacking, one may apply the same technique to reprogramming the brain. You know what happens to people who have suffered from brain stroke? These people may become paralyzed, unable to talk, walk, remember things, etc. The process of their recovery is straightforward. The problematic area is identified, and if it is something that can be retrained, rehabilitation therapy is involved. These people learn to walk, talk, etc. all over again. My former language professor suffered a stroke which took away his ability to speak. Now he has learned to talk all over again, starting with pronunciation, sentence formation, etc. What an irony, isn't it? A language professor has to learn the language all over again. Anyway, the same system of reprogramming will apply if you want to improve any area of your brain. Let's say that you are an analytical person and you want to improve your creative side. The reason for that is a girl that you have met who is quite artistic and you like her, but you have no idea about art or creative processes in general. To approach her in some way, you need to learn to be creative. This can be done in many ways. The easiest ones are to try to write or paint. If you want to write a creative story, you will need to brainstorm ideas first. You will take a pen and paper and start writing ideas for the main topic of your story. While you are there, you can think about the characters, space, and time where the story is located, different plots that are intertwined with the main story, etc. Writing is a quite complex process, but it is something that you cannot learn by studying, but you need to write in order to improve your writing skills. When it comes to drawing and painting, you need to practice different techniques to see what suits you best. You can also try coloring books for adults. These will give you time to think, brainstorm, and relax anytime you feel you need relaxation. On the other hand, you can improve your organizational skills in the same manner. You find out what suits your needs and implement them in your everyday organization. The same works for memorizing techniques. If you are struggling to learn something, you can use a memorizing technique. There are so many ways you can improve the way you learn. You just need to know what works best for you. I know that I am an audio/visual learner. That means that I am able to learn something by listening or looking, and in many cases, this method of learning has proven to be better than others. I do not have any difficulties in learning while reading, but it is much easier for me to learn something while I am listening to someone speaking, or even watching a documentary about something that makes my learning much easier. Other people prefer reading or learning using mnemonics. Every person has their own preference when it comes to learning. Therefore, if you know what your technique is, half of the work is done already. And once you know what works best for you, you can boost your knowledge by implementing your favorite learning technique. When it comes to logical and critical thinking, there are some ways to hack into our brains and improve these skills as well. Many puzzles and riddles are available both in digital and physical form. You can immerse yourself into the sea of questionings where you will have to think with a clear head. Some of these puzzles have obvious, logical solutions, whereas others have difficult and complex ones. In the latter, you need to think outside the box and offer a solution that at first does not make sense, but once you put the other pieces of the puzzle together, it will be much clearer. This type of activity will enhance our logical thinking, and the more you do such activities, the more you will be able to think and analyze a situation before you even start solving the puzzle. Similar to this is the simulation games where one needs to find several clues in a room to find a key and escape the room. This concept is commonly known as escape the room/house, and it is available online as a game, or in some cities, there are actual rooms that are dedicated to such purposes. Now, this type of activity is meant for fun, but if you do engage in solving them, you will actually increase the ability to think logically and critically. On the other hand, there are activities that could also be done in order to increase the ability to think critically, such as book clubs. If you join one, you will see that you will all read a book together and then, based on that book, talk about different aspects and problems that are elaborated in that book, such as psychological, sociological, personal, etc. All in all, there is a possibility to improve and therefore hack into your own brain. As I've already said, all you need to do is to discover which area of your brain needs software upgrade and then work on installing it. Sometimes it may be difficult, but you need to remain persistent and you will succeed. Conclusion. Now that you've read the entire book on how to hack and reprogram your mind and brain, you should feel more confident about eliminating your bad behaviors and habits and changing them into positive ones. You can do this by following several steps that you need to adjust to your own needs and problems. When it comes to hacking your mind, you need first to understand how your mind works. You need to keep track of all the interferences your mind makes each day. That way, you will be able to predict when it's likely for it to interfere in your activities. The problem that an individual may often have is unable to focus attentively on something for a long period. Therefore, you need to learn how to hold your attention for longer periods and how to return to the main focus of your attention, even when your mind makes you think about something else. When it comes to eliminating and changing bad behaviors and habits, you have several steps in the process. First, you will identify the problem or negative behavior and understand the reasons behind them. You will do this by identifying the negative loops in your thinking that appear each time you are in a problematic situation. Then, you will think about what causes you to think negatively and understand that you might be overreacting. Then, you need to firmly decide that you will eliminate it from your behavior and stick to the decision for as long as you need to. If you stand by your decisions no matter what, you will be able to achieve anything you want. On the other hand, you are also able to see how one can hack their brains and improve aspects of your brain by stimulating specific areas of the brain to work harder. All in all, I hope you found this book mentally stimulating. Thank you. I would like to thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming along with me on this journey. There are many books out there, but you decided to give this one a chance. If you like this book, then I need your help. Please take a moment to leave an honest review of this book. This feedback gives me a good understanding of the kinds of books and topics readers want to read about, and it will also give my book more visibility. Leaving a review takes less than 1 minute and is much appreciated. Disclaimer notice. Please note that the information contained within this document is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Every attempt has been made to provide accurate, up-to-date, and reliable information. No warranties of any kind are expressed or implied. Readers acknowledge that the author is not engaging the rendering of legal, financial, medical, or professional advice. The content of this book has been derived from various sources. Please consult a licensed professional before attempting any techniques outlined in this book. By reading this document, the reader agrees that under no circumstance is the author responsible for any losses, direct or indirect, that are incurred as a result of the use of the information contained within this document, including, but not limited to, errors, omissions, or inaccuracies. This has been Mind and Brain Hacking for Beginners, written by Giovanni Rigters, narrated by J.A. Leidig. Copyright 2020 by Giovanni Rigters. Production copyright by Giovanni Rigters.